So I was on the Farm Bureau. I also served on the board here. And then from there, that passion, I became entered the UF Master Beekeeper program. Anybody familiar with the Master Beekeeper program? Okay, yeah, it's a great program. It's great to help you learn. You learn a lot about bees. So I completed that, became a Master Beekeeper, and then I decided, I was like, you know what, I think I maybe want to, I really like science, and I want to get into research. So I went to Dr. Jamie Ellis. I don't know, anybody familiar with Dr. Jamie Ellis? Yeah. And approached him, talked to him about, entering the program, graduate program, and eventually was able to find the funding for that, and now I'm a graduate student in his lab, Honeybee Research and Extension Lab. I can tell you it's been a great time. I've been there almost 2 years now. So I've been asked to come talk about my research. We as a lab like to let people know what we're doing, and that way you know how we're trying to help and better the bee community. We do a lot of varroa research. Mine is now something with in vitro rearing. And you're going to probably wonder why this is important, and I'm going to get into that, why it's important. But let me first define what in vitro means. Everybody's probably heard of in vitro fertilization, trying to have a baby. Basically, in vitro means being, it's outside of its natural environment. So in vitro rearing is rearing the honeybee outside of the natural environment. I'm rearing them in an incubator. So I'm kind of potentially playing like a mommy bee. So that's what in vitro means, just outside the natural environment. Okay, so this is just an overview of what I'm going to talk about. So I'm hoping to tie it in a little bit so you can have a little bit of basic bee biology as well, so it's not all boring about my research. In vitro rearing, I actually have 3 research projects. In vitro rearing was the first chapter. I'm finishing the second chapter, and then I have a third chapter that I'm finishing, going to work on next. But I'm going to kind of talk about the life cycle of the honeybee. We're going to talk about why nutrition is really important for the bees, especially the brood. I'm going to talk about royal jelly. That's my main subject that I have been researching is royal jelly and what it is. Larval diet, grafting. Anybody heard about queen rearing? The grafting. Grafting is something that I do, but not rearing queens. Why my research is important, and my actual project. Okay, so honeybee life cycle. They are considered, I also, so I'm at the University of Florida entomology department, but my funding is with the actual entomology department. So I do outreach, and I go to a lot of schools, and I talk about insects more than bees. But I really like to define things so that everybody gets an understanding. But holometabolous is the honeybee, and that also is wasps and butterflies. But holo means basically complete metamorphosis. And what that means is they actually have 4 stages in their life cycle. So you're going to have the egg that you can see on there, then you have the larva, and then it's going to turn into a pupa and eventually adult. And if you ever have a hard time remembering how long they're in the different stages as an egg, larva, I think it might, no. Okay, so you can just double the numbers. So it's an egg for 3 days, double it, 6 days as a larva, 12 days then as a pupa, and then the close is actually what we're as an adult. And then these are some images that I took of the actual process when I did in vitro rearing. The first image on the left is how small that larvae is when it hatches. It's so small. Has anybody done any grafting at all or looked at the larvae? Yeah, so you're kind of familiar. I mean, they're so tiny. I mean, I have to put glasses on so I can see them. Then you follow the images over. Kind of in the middle, you can see the pre-pupa, and that's where it actually goes from looking like that to the next image of where it looks like it'd be overnight. It's just amazing. I mean, to me, when I first saw this actual development, it just like blew my mind. But the pre-pupa, that's when they defecate also. You can see a little bit of a poop coming out. And then you can see as then they become the pupal stage, like purple-eyed, and then they eventually become the adult. So, bee nutrition, this is what I'm going to talk a little bit about, so you understand like royal jelly and why it's important. But let me first ask, as a beekeeper, what are kind of the first things that we want to look at when we inspect our colony? What are the things that we're looking for that are most important? Queen, yeah. So if you don't see a queen, what else are you looking for? Brood pattern, egg. So if you see eggs, you know your queen's been there now how many days? At least 3 days. Okay. Then what else are we looking for? Brood pattern that maybe can tell us if we have disease. So what does that mean? What else are we looking for? Food. What? Food. Yeah. So I think a lot of people don't realize honey and nectar are important. But what else, what other than nectar do they need? Pollen, yeah. And so this is something you always want to make sure. And this is why the bees, they need that pollen, and I'm going to explain to you why they need it as well. But bees and insects are all like us. They need all the main types of things. They need protein, they need carbohydrates, they need vitamins and minerals, and they need water. So, these are really important things for a healthy colony. Royal jelly, and the next slide I'm going to talk to you a little bit also where it comes from. But royal jelly is basically equal to what we call bee milk, or it's the basic milk that raises the baby bee, and that's the larva. The larva is the only thing that's going to eat royal jelly. But it's about 60-70% water, has very low fats, 10 hydroxy-2-dicanoic acid, that's 10 HDA. That's actually only found in royal jelly, and that's how they actually determine if it's actually pure or not, because it is a highly adulterated product. Then it has 9 to 18% proteins, and 9 of the proteins are called major royal jelly proteins. Now this is where I always find it fascinating, but these proteins, most of them come from, like, I'm going to talk to the next slide, the hyperpharyngeal gland, but one of the proteins actually comes from the part of the brain called the mushroom body. And I think that's amazing that actually they can actually make a protein from their brain to feed their babies. And of course it has a lot of sugars. Okay, so yeah, brain food. I don't know. It's almost like it's bee milk, so it's basically everything that raises the bee, but it comes out of the bee's head, which is what to me is more fascinating. But the main where it comes from is from the nurse bees, and they can be right around 3 to like 12 days old from when they close or when they come out of the cell. And what do the nurse bees eat? What do you think they need? What are the nurse bees eating? Pollen and bee bread. They are the main ones that eat pollen and bee bread. So if they don't have that, what happens? They can't feed the brood. They can't feed the babies. And you may actually, people say they see, they actually will cannibalize their young if they do not have enough food. So you may see a time, if you don't have pollen or bee bread in your colony, they're going to cannibalize, and then you're not going to see any more brood for a period of time. A lot of people sometimes maybe think the queen stopped laying. It's possible she did. It's also possible that they're cannibalizing their young due to lack of food. So this is where protein from pollen is very important. But they have this special gland called the hyperpharyngeal gland. It's located in their head. And prior to me starting the honeybee lab, I actually worked with a professor at Edgar College. He studied the brains of bees. And I think he has spoken here before, but he helped me do my own project with the hyperpharyngeal gland. So they have two sides in the head, and it looks like a cluster of grapes, and that's an image that I took with a special staining that you could see. You can't see it with the naked eye, but it's pretty small. But he taught me how to do like a lot of brain dissections and let me do my own project with those glands. But those are the main glands that produce royal jelly. They're located in the head of the bee. They also have mandibular glands too that also produce, and as we mentioned, a couple also comes from their mushroom bodies or their brain.
Do they just secrete it out there?
So they have to eat pollen. They have to have a good diet. It's like you eating like a good steak, and say you're a mother, you need to eat well so you can nurse and make food. So they have to eat well so they can make food, but it comes out of their head, and then they're going to feed it. It comes out of their mouth though. Yeah. And then there's something called trophallaxis where they can feed each other as well. But it's the main larval diet as we mentioned. And this is now royal jelly. Queens, the larvae eats just strictly royal jelly for those 6 days. But workers are fed royal jelly for days 1 through 3, and then the 3 to 6 days old, they're fed a little bit of pollen. So again, they are also, so it's the nurse bees need pollen, and then it's also the larvae. So it's not your adult bees don't need pollen at all. They just need carbohydrates enough to fuel them so they can either work or go forage. And but royal jelly is the main thing that I have to use in vitro rearing. There's no way around it right now to have an artificial diet, so I have to use this in my research. That would be one thing I actually love to do is make an artificial rearing diet, but again, like I mentioned, that 10 HDA, it's only found in royal jelly, so to actually mimic it is going to be difficult. The other thing to mention is like, They still don't know what determines a queen bee. There's a lot of literature out there. What makes a queen? They always said that they thought it was just royal jelly. But what they're actually saying now is that the pollen could work as a way of actually turning off genes. That maybe the pollen that does play the source as well. And they also found, they always thought it was like a quality factor. Maybe it was a protein. There was one called prolactin they thought maybe made a queen. But now they still don't know, but there's now with research they're pointing that it's actually just a quantity of diet. You know, if you are seeing a queen, something like that copious amount of royal jelly in there. And so somehow, because they have a lot of sugars and that kind of stuff, makes the queen. So, in the in vitro rearing diet, now this is every day this is like was a weekly thing I was having to do. It was very fatiguing, but it was also cool. But I was always trying to make diet, so I'd have to rely on royal jelly. As we mentioned, there's no way around it. And then we would add some extra sugars. We had to add yeast. They think that, they questioned what the point of the yeast was, but I think I just added some extra vitamins, and then also water. Now, the thing about royal jelly, it's amazing. It's very amazing. And a lot of people have taken this medicinally. They think that it's going to help like fertility or memory or longevity. So it's definitely been used a lot in longevity and that kind of stuff from medicinal use. Has anybody ever tried royal jelly? Some have. Did you like it?
Nope.
Yeah, I know it tastes great. And it's funny, because anything in the lab you can't eat, but and I'll get into why my royal jelly also is considered a biological contaminant. But I had a undergrad that was helping me with my research. He was always like, "That looks so good." He's like, "It looks, I wanted to eat it." And I was like, "You can't." But we were out working the bees and we had a queen cell, and I was like, "Here you go, here's your chance. I want you to try it." He tried it, and he was just like, "Oh," he's like, "This nasty stuff." Definitely, it's not, tastes weird. But it more or less is considered to be antimicrobial, so it's pretty interesting. It's amazing. It's been shown in some research it can inhibit European foul brood. And as a pathogen reservoir, there's been no actual documentation to say that it is able of transmitting, or in research. There's been no actual research that says, or literature that says, hey, yeah, you can transfer a disease through this product. But there are some pathogens. Definitely viruses can be found in royal jelly, so, they found a lot of different viruses. American foul brood, now that is one thing that can sustain. Royal jelly is very acidic, and American foul brood is a spore-forming bacillus bacteria, and it can live, I think like 40 or 50 years in the environment once it forms a spore, so it's really hard to kill. Then also Nosema has been found in royal jelly also, which is a microsporidian, like kind of like a little microorganism. So I'm going to tell you about the process now for in vitro rearing. So it's a lot of work. So every week, basically, what I was having to do is I have to go find my queens. I have to find them. And prior to doing this, I wasn't a very good queen finder. If I was trying to determine if my colony had a queen or not, I just looked for eggs, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. But for this, I actually had to find the queen. So I got really good at finding her. Especially we at the bee lab, we mark all of them if we can. And the other thing we do is we clip their wings. I've become a big proponent of that too. I mean, some people might frown upon it, but when they swarm, they really can't fly away. So generally, if they swarm, they just kind of stay somewhere in a low branch. So it's a way to prevent your swarms from going on. But I have to find her, and I put her in something like this cage here. There's a picture. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to know those larvae are all within the same age when they hatch. Because I don't want to, for my research, I don't want to have various ages. I want them to all be about the same age. So I put her in that cage. 24 hours later, I release her from the cage, put the cage back, and put it back into the colony, and then there's where I'm going to let the bees take care of those eggs. Now, 3 days later is when I'm going to go back, take that frame out, and I'm going to have plus or minus like 12-hour-old newly hatched larvae. So the grafting process, and I have, I think, an image, but anybody ever tried grafting? No, Josh probably has, and some Becky and Linda, yeah. It's definitely, it's a, it definitely takes practice. I had to do a lot of practicing before I did this, but, I had to wear glasses, though, to see, because they're so small. I know some people can do eggs, but I had to do with larvae. You have to be careful also with grafting. This is one thing I found fascinating, is the larvae actually, insects breathe through respiratory tubes called spiracles. And so for the larvae, they have 9 spiracles when they're larvae on one side. And so when you actually transfer them over, you have to make sure that you don't flip them over. Because if you flip them over, and if like me, I'm putting them into a pool of food, I actually would drown them. So be very careful, make sure I pick them up, transfer them, and put them back down on the same side. I think I have an image. That's just a time lapse of me. I got really good at grafting. I think the most I could do, I think I did like 12 48 well plates, and I could do it in like an hour and a half. So yeah, I could graft like, I don't know, 800 larvae in like an hour and a half. And my success rates were pretty good. I also followed the protocol of Dr. Jim Ellis's, one of his papers. It's one of the most, has the highest success rate of in-vitro rearing. There's a lot of papers out there. His has a 95% success rate. So it's one that's followed all over the world. People follow that process. I'd also like to add, when I started at the B Lab, nobody taught me anything. That's part of the school thing, is you have to teach yourself. So I had to was just given this paper, had to get the ingredients, had to figure out how to graft and all that. All right, and then so also for in vitro rearing, one of the most interesting things is we have to be very sterile. And if you're out in the field with the bees, you're like, it's not a sterile environment, but for me, for some reason, I have to keep everything as sterile as I can. So I work with something here called a positive airflow hood. It actually blows air towards me. It goes through like a HEPA filter, so I'm not breathing air on there. I have to wear a mask. I actually have a heater on, a space heater, keeping it as warm as I can. And then I also put there about the spiracles, which we already mentioned. So the larval life stages, we mentioned it takes them about 6 days. For me though, I only feed them 5 of the 6 days. Now, one of the other interesting things is that I think the average, don't quote me on this, but the average time frame that a larvae is fed every day, their nurse bees are feeding them right around 150 times a day. I think the queen is fed a lot more often than that, but for me, there's no way I can go in 150 times a day and feed these larvae, so we feed them every day for 5 of the 6 days. As they get older, and there's a lot of science behind this, but I don't know how they determine, but the sugar ratios change, the royal jelly concentrations, they're kept at 35 degrees Celsius, which is about 95, and then for the larvae though, it's kept at a very, very high humidity, 94%, believe it or not, for in vitro rearing. And I think because it's such an artificial environment, the bees in the colony are going to able to keep they're nursing those larvae like 150 times a day. I'm only going there once, so they would dry out otherwise in that heat that I have. And again, those are the images I took of the every day, and you can see they actually almost double in size every day. It's pretty amazing, I think. They go from, it's amazing. This teeny little thing doubled in size to this big, fat, juicy grub. Has anybody ever eaten a larva?
Haven't been that hungry yet.
Well, for me, now, as being an outreach coordinator for the department, we like to talk about entomophagy, which is eating of insects, and we actually do cooking events, and I've eaten a lot of interesting things now, and I was like, you know what, all this time I'm going to try a larvae, and it didn't taste bad. So this is just a video I took of one. You can actually see that's its mouth. It's looking for food. It's hungry. It was like, where am I? And then once I put the food in, it goes back down and it just starts eating the food.
Was that real time?
Yeah, that's real time. Yeah, play it again.
Yum, yum, yum.
Yeah, you can see it. It's actually kind of cute, I think.
Delicious.
Yeah, I should have one where I put the food in there. Now this is when I played around, because I wanted to do an artificial diet, but I tried spirulina, And this one I think was cool because you can actually, what you're seeing is the hemolymph, or that's their blood vessel basically that's going in. You can actually see spirulina is like blue-green algae. You could see it moving through their blood. That's right. It's pretty cool. And I know they do this, they've been playing around, a lot of scientists now are using that as pollen supplements, spirulina as well. So these are actually all images, again, 2 of the pupal life stages. So the 12 days are all there. You can see how much they change each day. It's amazing to me just how they go from looking like a grub to overnight they look like a bee. Now, what we have to do with the in-vitro rearing is I have to transfer them. It says transfer, so I actually have to put them on, I had the plate somewhere. They have to be transferred over another plate with these little pieces of like tissue called chem wipes, but we call those bee diapers because they defecate right around like 9 days, 8, 9 days old. With in vitro rearing, of course that's when they're capped over, they're actually capped over at that point. What happens with the defecation there, it gets like absorbed into the wax. But since there's no real wax, we have to put like a little bee diaper in there to soak up their poopy. And if you don't do that, they actually have a higher, mortality rate if you don't do that.
I'm not eating any bee wax now.
Yeah. This is the fruit cone you don't want to eat. Okay, so you wonder why is in vitro very important? There's actually a lab. So I've become the person now in charge of doing this at the Honeybee Research and Extension Lab. There's another lab in Alachua that does a lot of stuff. We know a lot about what different things like pesticides affect the adult life stages, but what do these types of things have on the developmental life stages, like pesticides or nutrition or hormones or this stuff? And so this is where it's important. You can see, they do experiments. Usually what they'll do is in vitro studies and then also colony level studies done with like a pesticide so that you can see, the mortality, if there is or is not, to the brood or the life cycles. So consequently, this is a common tool used in a lot of industries, in academia, like with us at the Vet Bee Lab, and then the government as well. Okay, so my research, why was it kind of important? This is where it gets fickle and funny, and how we were talking about, the government is. But royal jelly, as we know, we can all buy it. But most royal jelly, we're going to talk about, you can make your own royal jelly, but for being in a research facility and be cost effective, it would just be too expensive. So we actually, I think that's on my next slide though, but we purchase a lot of, our royal jelly comes from overseas, usually from China, because they can produce a very high quantity of that. But because it comes from another country, the USDA and Animal Plant Health Inspection Services considers it a biological contaminant in terms of research. So that means, I'll probably talk about it in my next slide too, but we have to treat it like it's like Ebola, basically. With my research, we're hoping that you can't, basically, because it's treated, everything has to be considered biological contaminant, including the bees that are reared. So we can't do continued research how those bees that were fed a pesticide actually are as an adult and how they function out in the field. So this is an image of my lab. I'm lucky I have my own lab space because we had to become a USDA level 2 containment facility. There's a lot of, it took the first 6 months that I was there that I was the lead person in terms of getting that done. We had to have door sweeps, self-closing doors, then netting over the AC vents, even though the bees are never going to be released, but you have to have all the other doors in the lab had to have self-closing doors, door sweeps, had to have an adjacent built door outside. Everything has to be sterilized. Any tools and instruments that touches royal jelly has to be sterilized, including the bees. So it's kind of an unfortunate thing that I raised all these bees and I have to humanely euthanize them, and then they have to be autoclaved. Autoclave is a way of reaching high temperatures that can sterilize everything. So this is where my research is on royal jelly. I know it's crazy. The crazy thing is what, Nathan?
Just a question, that's all solely because of the source, the outsourcing?
Yes, because it's coming from overseas from another country. So if it was in the country, you wouldn't have to do that. But this is the thing. I could go buy that royal jelly myself from the same company and eat it. I could even probably feed it to my own bees. But as a research facility, we have to become a biological containment facility, get the permitting. Permitting took forever to get as well. But it's the same stuff that you and I could eat, but because we are feeding it to bees, we have to follow all the regulations behind it.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Are you purchasing the royal jelly, like, say you get it from China, how do you know that it's not adulterated with it?
Well, yeah, this is an interesting thing. So, it's supposed to get checked. And the way they check it is for that fatty acid, the 10-HGA, a lot of times. But there's two other chapters in my research. One is I'm doing like a metagenomic analysis. So I'm looking at all the different microbiota in royal jelly. And I've had like some samples that have like really, really high levels of DNA. And so, you wonder if they've been adulterated or not. So it's going to be interesting to see those results down the road. But yeah, you don't know. It could very easily be adulterated. Especially, it's expensive, even if, it's cheap buying it, but it's still expensive. So there I just put up there, the 526 permit is what we had. So yeah, we can't do any field studies, we just can't see what happens to these bees. And then China there was determined to be like one of the leading producers. And so what they do is you can go home now when you get home and do like a YouTube video of royal jelly harvesting in China. It's like, it's amazing. Like, I don't know. I would love to go actually see how they do it. They rear a copious amount of queens, and then they just scoop the larvae out, scoop the royal jelly out, add it to a tub, and just keep doing that. So it's kind of sad. I hate it because you think about all the larvae that are dying for that, and then you gotta go rear larvae, and So my research project had 3 chapters. The first chapter was this. I was looking at irradiating royal jelly because we're looking at trying to sterilize it, and then can the bees be reared on sterilized royal jelly? Then we're looking at what are the microorganisms in royal jelly, and then also looking at inoculating royal jelly and then re-sterilizing it and seeing if that works. We did a couple different methods of sterilizing, but the main method we're looking at is irradiation. This is actually a common tool that is used in a lot of beekeeping equipment, though it's not an easy thing that anybody has access to. But it uses a cesium irradiator. It actually takes this isn't the actual irradiator, I couldn't put an image of it up. But it took like 3 days of radiation to reach the levels of 25 kilograys, which is a lot of radiation. So what happened was originally the government had on the permit that you could irradiate royal jelly and then feed it to the bees, and then it was okay. It wasn't considered a biological contaminant. But there's been no research actually done proving that bees can be reared on irradiated royal jelly, and it actually kills microorganisms. So the importance of my project, then what we're hoping is to have some permit revisions. This is going to be advantageous to the research community because we're hoping that, we're going to prove that, one, we can sterilize it and that the bees can be reared on royal jelly, yes or no. And then we're hoping that this will be good for the research community so then we can start studying behavior and going on another level of seeing how that maybe if you feed pesticides to in vitro to a larvae, how does that larvae function as an adult? But right now, researchers can't do that kind of thing. Oh, so this is a time lapse. So Eurofins is the one that's in close to the university. They have a cool video where they took of.
I write a lot of essays for school.
Going to be an
I
ad.
also write sales descriptions for my Etsy shop.
It's currently on my work emails.
So I think it's about 2 minutes long. You can see they took a whole time lapse of the whole process. For the whole process for me, it's like 18 days because, I'm taking our already hatched egg. You can see how they swim around.
Jennifer, another question on the royal jelly. From what I understand, you're not allowed to bring honey into China because of the contamination of polyphenol and some other things.
good thing you brought up. When I'm doing a lot of the research on the literature of royal jelly, it has definitely been a lot of more what their concern is, yes, antibiotics and stuff in there. So yeah, there's definitely concern for that as well. Then they go through like this quiet stage.
It's not shelf stable either.
Royal jelly, yeah, usually it has to be stored in a freezer or refrigerated, and I think it lasts 2 years in the freezer, and refrigerated maybe like 30 days.
It's really easy to get. I bought a few jars of it.
Yeah.
But I'm devastated that I may very well have raised tweens that have Falcon based on what you said.
Oh, you mean you're actually feeding it to your... See, this is the thing. Any of us can do that, but as a lab, we can, which is crazy. That they don't have more, they're not stricter on it. More strict, I should say. And you can see here, they're enclosing, emerging. Yeah, they're really cute. They come out, their tongues out, their proboscis.
They're cleaning their rooms when they
Do they just start flying around right away?
No. Yeah, well, no, I can't. I can't even let them out. Yeah, usually when they have an exoskeleton, so usually the exoskeleton has to harden a little bit. So like they can't even sting you for like 24 hours. They might try to fly, they kind of just bounce around. I guess that's the end of my presentation, but what I do want to talk about a couple of things. We have Bee College. I know I'm glad to hear that you guys have a raffle for that. Bee College is coming March 11th and 12th. If you don't win the raffle or not, we hope to see you there. This is going to be our first actual in-person Bee College now, I don't know, like 2 years almost probably. We tried to have it in the fall, and I think it was just people were concerned that too many people were going to be in the buildings. I have a QR code. You can scan that from where you're sitting if you want to have access to that. But no, it's great. You learn so much. And this is where I started. Actually, you know what happened? This is also what happened. So I remember beekeeper, and I came to Pinnell's Beekeepers meeting, and I won the Bee College ticket. So I went down to like St. Augustine, went to Bee College. That's now I'm just remembering. I went to Bee College. I'm like, this is so cool. It's so much fun. And then from there, I found the Master Beekeeper program, and now look at me like. It's like, I guess we all get very passionate about, all of us are beekeepers, I think we're all pretty passionate about our love for bees. Now this is what I want to talk to you about too. So we need your help, the Honeybee Lab. If you want to be a part of research, now's your time. What we need is, this is really cool, but we need 2 jars of honey. So 1 jar from spring of 2020 and 1 from the spring of 2021 if you have it, but they have to be from the same apiary. That's why we want to try to hit up urban beekeepers, because usually a lot of urban beekeepers keep their honey, and they have like 1 or 2 apiaries. So if you think you have this, the benefit of this, yes, you lose 2 jars, maybe 2 pounds of honey, but you're going to get a free pesticide analysis. If you're worried you don't want to know, then don't send it in. But a lot of us may be interested. What kind of
Well, because nobody's saved their own money in spring 2020, I'm sure there's some in the club, but should we save some this spring for and then save some for the next couple of years? We got 20 of them, couple jars?
No, what they're looking for is specifically 2020, 2021.
They're not gonna do it again?
No. I'm not really sure I think it has something to do with,
Spraying
Some
mosquitoes
recent
or
events
something.
that have occurred.
what's that?
Some recent events that have occurred in 2020.
I think it was like with COVID, basically, yeah. So something to do with that. So if you think you have it, let me know. I'll have my email on the next slide. But this is your chance if you want to be a part of research, and also get something cool and know about your pesticides. And then I got a QR code there for Bee Lab if you want to find out more, and then also on our Facebook page if you want to follow us on social media. And then I'm open to questions.
State fair.
Oh, the Florida State Fair. Okay. Yep. The Florida State Fair is coming up. It's February 10th to the 21st, I think. Florida State Beekeepers Association. If you're familiar with it, they're very important. They're the ones that help get urban beekeeping. So we want to make sure we support them. This is one of their biggest fundraisers. but they need volunteers for their Florida State Fair booth. I think you get a free ticket to the state fair. If there's enough people, you can walk around the fair, come back, let some other people go around back and forth. So you can make it a fun thing where you don't have to just be at the booth the whole time. But you're there just to talk about bees. Everything's something that we all love. We also do honey samples. You can let people try this honey, and then they make the fundraiser by selling honey. So if you think you're interested, I don't have a slide on there. I should have one. You can email me, and then I can email it to the president of the Florida State Beekeepers if you're interested in volunteering at the fair. For me, I'll be there. I have to be there with the entomology department. So if you're there, I'll see you there too. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Have you or anyone else tried raising queens in vitro?
Well, that was my one thing I really wanted to do. Like when I was like, I want to do queens in vitro, because a lot of people, they still don't know, right? I said that. But I kind of started, I was playing around with things. I know what I want to do in my head, but because as I'm a master's student, I want to get into the PhD program, but as a master's student, I have to have something that's going to be within like a year of results. So the queen rearing is probably going to take a little longer. So not in our lab, no, not yet. Yeah.
When you're feeding those bees, is there like, if we're grafting queens, should we be feeding the bees a better diet?
I've never actually done like queen rearing, so maybe Josh can help, but I've heard of some people putting like a little diet in the cell, but you're putting them back into the colony also, so the nurse bees are going to go right to help feed the larvae, but you also need to make sure if you're grafting them, you have to be pretty fast about it so they're not drying out too. But, I think that's probably a preference of how beekeepers do their queen grafting process in the colony level, if they put food or not in there, don't know. I think some people might put royal jelly. Here's the thing, I don't know if you noticed, in my feeding, I use just royal jelly. I don't use any pollen at all, and I still rear workers. So it's kind of a weird process of in vitro rearing. You actually, at a lot of the times, you can actually rear intercast. They're almost like a cross between a queen and a worker is a thing too, because they're not getting the pollen, they're just getting all the royal jelly, but there's still, some things is not quite right to rear a queen. Queens eat only royal jelly, and that's pretty much what I'm feeding them, but they still don't become queens, so it's kind of an interesting thing.
Question.
Yeah.
The dates on the bee college, is that during spring break?
I think so, yeah, probably.
I figured it was,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, yeah, I don't know,
Because
spring break, at UF, I think it might be for UF, but spring breaks are all different.
It only makes sense because the campus is so busy, I would think.
Yeah, I think it is, yeah. I think it's probably strategically planned that way.
All right. And where's your place? Is it on the south end of the campus where the entomology part is?
Yeah, we're right there at the entomology department. And, we also, if you ever come to Gainesville, we do tours. I think we only do tours once a month right now because of COVID. I think it's like the first Wednesday. So, you just go call us and if you want a tour of the lab.
You're like right down the street from where the museum is at?
Yeah, we're very close to the museum, yeah. It's a really nice area of the university because it's all trees and stuff. Anybody else questions? Well, thank you very much for having me come speak. Actually, Bill Rivers didn't come here. I've been past member and past vice president, so. Okay.
Do you know if anyone will be doing any study to see if you can find some royal jelly with foul brood and then see if it will transfer to a queen?
Well, we talked about doing that, we didn't want to do American foul brood inoculations because we weren't very comfortable with the, that would be something you can, that's called Koch's postulate. You can get it in there and you make the bees sick, and then if the sterilization method works or not. We're not taking it to that level right now.
Right, okay.
Are you doing any classes or anything at the bee college?
I think I do.
Stuck to the phone.
Yeah, I'm gonna do like an 8-year stuff. Go back.
like I said, I love working with her as a vice president, and I knew this would be interesting tonight. Just a little information. So dealt a lot with the state association over the years, and Jamie Ellis, there's just not a neater guy, and you won't find anybody with a bigger love for bees than that man. He's really cool. At a point, he was probably kind of thinking about leaving Gainesville, and a lot of the bee industry got behind him and talked him into staying and promised him a new lab. The state of Florida didn't see that promise so shining, so the bee industry got behind a lot of people and a lot of businesses, and a lot of clubs got together, and that lab that's in Gainesville is a big result of the bee industry and all, and pushed it as far as they did and got it to where they are in the lab he has.
Yeah, we're definitely spoiled. I mean, it's probably one of the top bee lab rankings.
So Jamie's lab was, you saw her picture of her lab area. His whole lab for all of his students before the big bee lab that we have there now was about that size. It was basically a closet. And then we got into, we got to be a chance. We actually spent some money and put it towards the college with our name on a plaque up there, and we also have our name on a observation hive that our club is a part of. So it's really a neat place, and we've been up and toured it. If you can get a chance to go up and tour, if you can go to the bee college, it's definitely will be a big asset to you in the future. So we're gonna do some raffles. If I can get Bobby, can I get you to come up and work the table for me? And I will call some numbers. So since we have two smokers, I'm going to start out with a smoker tonight, and I'm going to end up with a smoker. So the first on a red ticket only, the last four numbers is 6361 for a brand new day dance smoker. 6361 is the last four. Now I get to take it home.
Arizona, Ed?
I think so.
I know the print's really small. The next thing is a bee brush. So it is 6277. 6277 for a bee brush. A red hive tool is the next one. Is 6251. 6251. The next red ticket is for a decapper, a green handled decapper. Is 6124. 6124. The next thing is a cake mold of a beehive. 6085. 6085. So, a hot pot holder and 10 dish towel. 6297. 6297. Gloria book. It can be a signed edition too, because we have the artist here tonight. The book is 6312. 6312. So if anybody has a iPhone 11 Pro and they're looking for a case that has bees, black bees embossed on it, or they're looking for a little protective case, they can have that. And then we have the last smoker. I believe it's 6263. 6263. I'll make y'all deal. I'll take the 11-row case and simplify it. All right. So now we are stepping up to do which one of them?
All right, so we've got two drawings, one for the Bee College. The Bee College had, thank you, the Bee College, we had 46 entries, not purchases, but 46 entries. The Duke, we had 98 entries, all right? So
Y'all are more interested in bees than you are learning. Just saying, it's a little quick math there.
So which one, what do we want to do first?
We're not on the list. We, paid with our dues. She's got an email.
What's your name?
Parrish.
Parrish.
Bee College or Duke? Both.
All right, did you,
I think you called her. Remember you called and said she double paid or something, then you refunded? She got it. Where's your email? One arm. One arm.
one arm?
Yeah.
No, I don't have it.
Got
Right
an
here.
email.
Technical difficulty.
All right, Ecology, you said? No problem. If I can't find the payment, I'll charge you for it. How's that? But I'll put you on the list and we'll charge you if I don't have the money. I think I refunded it because you bought the wrong thing or something, right?
Yo, we bought 2 for her and 2 for me, and you refunded. You said we double paid, but we actually.
No, but online it was. Ecology.
Yeah.
All right, Parrish. Sorry, Parrish.
Yeah.
Ecology. First name?
Linda.
And what'd you pay, 5 or 10?
Jennifer,
Okay.
so was the easiest thing to do is go on the state's webpage or who's to sign up to help work at the fair? Okay, so I gotta tell you folks, they usually work you about a half a day. You can hang out at the fair and get some fair food. It's a big asset. So the state over the years has set up the Food Act so we can sell honey out of our houses without having to have a bottling license.
Yeah.
They changed the law in Pinellas County. They changed the law for the whole state to where we can actually keep hives. It was illegal to about 6, 7, 8 years ago in Pinellas County to keep hives. So the State Beekeepers Association has done a lot of things for beekeepers in the state of Florida. And if you can get out and give them a little time during the week or on the weekend, you meet some really neat people at the honey booth telling you about their grandpas having bees. I heard the story before, so the reason I want to.
All right, we got the two extra names added to the raffle here. So we're ready. We're ready. You want to hit the button?
So how does that work? I want to hit the wrong button, delete everything. Yeah, just tap it. Round and round it goes. Everybody's dizzy. Oh, even a little noise. Come on, come on, come on. So you are planning on going to the college,
Oh,
right?
yeah, I've been
Okay.
dying to go.
Have you been in the past?
Yeah.
Okay. So you know what you're up for?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
All right, we have 98 entries for the nuke.
You look like spokes on a bike.
All right, so there's 98 in here. I'm going to shuffle it. Johnny? All right, I'll do it.
Little sound effect.
Is Alex here?
Is Alex here tonight? All right, we'll have to notify.
Yeah, I've got his email. I've got everybody's email who wasn't here tonight, so I'll notify Alex as the winner. Maybe he's watching live on Facebook.
Is there any questions? Come on, y'all have been lacking with questions. Before the COVID, people had lots of questions. What happened? Is this a part of the virus? Okay, yes, ma'am.
Related to anything, so you brought up the registering your beehives, and I have only had them for like about 6 weeks or so.
Okay.
And I'm planning to get 2 more. Is there a county-specific inspector, or is it just a statewide person?
No, Becky.
So she does about 5 counties, the gal behind you with the blue mask, who's coming to get you now and probably arrest you. No, so she'll get with you and you call her and you'll set some up. So you'll call Becky or call the state ag line and they'll get you through to them and they'll go round and round and round and go and you'll end up talking to Becky and she'll get with you about coming out to your house and doing it whenever y'all guys can set up a thing. You do need to hive bees because she's inspecting your bees. She's not inspecting you to have bees. So you have to have live bees. And she can also assist you with how many hives you can have at the time. Have a list of questions ready for her because when you get talking about bees, if you're like me, your brain goes to soup and you forget everything else you're going to do. Yes, Jim?
The operator days have been changed.
Hold on, I can't hear him.
The operator days have been changed.
1
Work
week?
day for educational days.
Right.
We put out an email about it.
So there's no training day this Saturday, Johnny mentioned earlier. That will be postponed for 1 week from this Saturday at the SPC apiary. And at Great Bay on Monday, well, that's still tentative. It will not be Monday, but we will see what day. Look for an email on that. Yes. Jim. Wednesday. I'm sorry. Okay. I thought you said we'll see.
Saturday's 1 week off. Unless it's bad weather. Okay. We will send an email out on that.
Yeah, the email's already gone off on Saturday. It's a week off. I have not sent an email about the Great Day here yet, but I will send it tomorrow. It will be scheduled for Wednesday.
That's gonna be Wednesday?
Yes, sir, Wednesday.
All right, I appreciate y'all coming out. Thank you for coming out and being with us. Thank you for being a part of this association or interested in it. Ask you to please come back. Be healthy and be safe out there. Thank you.
Anybody have an 11 Pro that wants this case? No ticket needed.
I said thank you.
That was mine.
I think my mom's, she got an iPhone 11.
11 Pro.
I don't have a Pro. Is there an iPhone and an iPhone Pro?
Yes. The camera's different. It won't fit. It'll only fit an iPhone Pro.